What is going on? No Horsing Around family, back at it again. Senior Bowl quarterback edition. This is probably one of my favorite times of the years, guys. I'm a complete draft nerd. I know that we were getting into free agency more than before we'll get into kind of that combine-ish talk. But I did want to give you guys some snippets and highlights from what we've seen so far at the Senior Bowl. And in my mind, that's where the draft starts, right? We're going to kind of identify some quarterbacks in this podcast that we are worthy of at least looking at. We don't know what we're going to do with Carson Wentz, and that'll be a discussion for a future podcast. We'll have plenty of time to talk that over and talk through that options as well. But in this one, really looks like the star, was Malik Willis. He had the best totality, played very, very good in the weather. I think that was one thing that really stood out. And I don't think that the scouts quite expected him to be quite as accurate. It was described to me as though, they all miss throws. They all look like about what we thought they were going to look like, right? No clear cut, franchise. Hey, I'm going to give up everything I got to trade up to be in the top, 1, 2, or 3 in the draft to go up and get these guys. You guys are in a kind of a weird grouping. You got Malik Willis, you got Kenny Pickett, you got Carson Strong, you got Matt Corral. Who might have really done well for just not even showing up, honestly. Kenny Pickett talking about it, that hand size. I know that's so important to NFL scouts. He had a good bounce back day yesterday. It was last day live. He had a couple really good throws down the seam. He, to me, seems, as of right now, to be the most pro-ready guy from a mental standpoint. He's not going to wow you with his arm like Malik Willis. Malik Willis, I think, broke the record for a 74-mile-an-hour, football thrown. I mean, that is elite. That's some juice coming out of that man's arm. Great athletic escapability in the modern era where you want a guy who can kind of do that off-platform stuff. Guys, when things are all breaking down, he can use his legs to still help you win games. He's going to be an intriguing guy. I know Pittsburgh was a team that they said they were really, really talking to him and really, really questioning him. We had Ed Dodds down there too as well. I know he's interviewing out at Pittsburgh as well, but Ed Dodds was there checking all of the players out, as well as Carson Strong had a couple of nice throws. How does that leg hold up? I think that's the big question with him. How does his health, translate to the NFL? Because he seems to have a really good base, as far as what he's doing, how that ball comes out of his hands in his own right. I think he threw a 70-mile-an-hour ball, which is nothing to sneeze at when you're looking at, big-time arms. Sam Howell did not look to have a good last day, in the scrimmage. Used his legs pretty well, but throwing, he was a little bit shaky, a little bit inaccurate. We're going to go back to Kenny Pickett where, the hand size, guys, everybody compares that hand size that he may have to Joe Burrow. We all know how that kind of played out. Not as special as Joe Burrow, though, from just a cerebral and accuracy standpoint, the way the ball comes out, not the same. You can't really compare the two, but I think Kenny Pickett's probably going to be taken in the first round. I actually think this year, no matter what, I don't know how it's going to fall, depending on what free agency does. I think there'll be 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. It just happens, man. I mean, somebody's going to get desperate. Somebody's going to come up there. Hell, maybe the Colts. You never know. Something to look at. And I think it's something that Chris Ballard has to look at, right? Like, you want to look at all angles. He mentioned in that presser, I like to have something taken care of for the next 10 years. I'm tired of getting Band-Aids. Well, this is one way of doing it. Probably in a year where you don't have to be as aggressive and you wouldn't have to give up as much. A, did you identify a quarterback that you think can be a franchise quarterback? And B, where do you think he's going to fall? And C, what type of resources would you have to give up now and in the future to go get a guy like that, like a Kenny Pickett or a Malik Willis, if you fall in love with them? It'll be very, very interesting. Desmond Ritter had a couple nice throws. For me, I don't like his windup. I think it's a little bit delayed. I know he's a gamer. There'll be some things that people will like about him. I think there'll be a lot of holes poked in him as we go on. I think you'll see him kind of slide to day 2. I don't know, maybe even an early day 3 guy. But yeah, I mean, business as usual. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis looked pretty good. Sam Howell had some moments as well. A lot of people have talked about Sam Howell as being, a little more ready-ish. One thing I will say to consider when you're doing your scouting, you're doing your homework when it comes to Malik Willis, he's not a particularly tall quarterback. He's 6 foot. And that combine measurement is going to really matter. Is he really 6 foot? I know that there's been some shorter quarterbacks that's had some success in this league, but you'd like for him to be a true 6 foot at least. Maybe even if he can just, for his sake, 6 foot and a quarter, 6 foot and a half would really, really, really matter, as far as it goes. So, but that ball pops out of his hands. There's going to be a lot to like. So if you're looking for a guy that you can kind of mold and you can kind of look at as far as, projecting him to be a special player, maybe down the road, he'd be one guy that I would certainly start scouting and looking at. I check out a PFF podcast on their daily podcast. That's somewhere I would kind of start my draft venture. If I'm your guys, you want to dive in and have some draft nerd talks, I'll be glad to do that. Light us up in the comments. Is there a quarterback in this draft class that you like, that you feel like, oh my gosh, like I fell in love with this guy. I think this guy's going to turn out to be somebody really, really special. Light us up in the comments, guys. Like, rate, review, share, subscribe, and join the family. Take care.